She ruined my wedding out of jealousy, my sister's shocking betrayal. I always thought wedding disasters were something that happened to other people. The cake toppling over, a drunk uncle making a scene, maybe even a bridesmaid fainting from the heat. What I never imagined was that my own sister would be the one to bring everything crashing down around me on what should have been the happiest day of my life. Emily and I had been together for 4 years before I proposed. We met at a friend's barbecue. She was the one laughing by the cooler, making everyone around her smile. I was drawn to her immediately. There was something genuine about the way she carried herself, confident but never demanding attention. We moved in together after a year, adopted a rescue dog named Toby, and built a life I was proud of. When I finally proposed at the botanical gardens where we had our third date, her tears of joy confirmed what I already knew. We were meant for this. My sister Rachel had always been what my mother diplomatically called spirited. Growing up, she was the one who needed to be the center of attention at family gatherings. She'd perform impromptu dance routines at Thanksgiving dinner or dramatically recount stories from school where she was invariably the misunderstood hero. I loved her. She's my sister, after all. But even I had to admit she could be exhausting. Rachel had been single for the past 3 years after a messy breakup with a guy none of us particularly liked. Since then, she'd developed a cynical edge about relationships that occasionally surfaced in biting comments. "Marriage is just a piece of paper that makes breaking up more expensive," she'd say at family dinners, watching my parents exchange glances. Or when Emily and I announced our engagement, "Well, good luck with that white picket fence fantasy." I always defended her to Emily. "She's just going through a phase," I'd say. "Deep down, she wants us to be happy." I was wrong. The wedding planning went smoothly at first. Emily is organized and practical, qualities that made her a natural at navigating vendors and timelines. Rachel initially seemed supportive, showing up to tastings and offering opinions on color schemes. But about a month before the wedding, something shifted. She started arriving late to events or canceling last minute. When she did show up, there was an edge to her comments. "This venue is so basic," she muttered during our final walkthrough of the rustic barn Emily had fallen in love with. At the menu tasting, she picked at her food and said, "I guess not everyone can afford the premium package." Each time, I'd catch Emily's eye and shrug apologetically. Each time, I made excuses for my sister's behavior. Looking back, I should have paid attention to the warning signs, should have confronted Rachel directly. But weddings have a way of creating tunnel vision. I was so focused on making sure everything was perfect for Emily that I missed the storm brewing right beside us. The joint bachelor/bachelorette weekend was the first real indication that something was seriously wrong. We'd rented a lake house about 2 hours outside the city, nothing extravagant, just a place for our closest friends to relax, swim, and celebrate with us. Rachel showed up 5 hours late with a guy none of us had ever met before, some bartender she'd apparently just started dating. She was already tipsy when they arrived, and by midnight, she was belligerently drunk, telling embarrassing stories from my childhood and making pointed comments about how Emily certainly managed to lock down the responsible brother. When Emily gently suggested that maybe she'd had enough to drink, Rachel knocked over a glass of red wine directly onto Emily's white sundress. "Oops," she said, not making any move to help clean up. "White is so impractical anyway, don't you think?" The look in her eyes chilled me. There was something deliberate there, something I didn't want to acknowledge. The next morning, Rachel was full of dramatic apologies, blaming the alcohol and claiming she didn't remember much of the night. I wanted to believe her. It was easier than confronting the alternative. 3 weeks before the wedding, Rachel sent us a selfie of her in a cream-colored gown that was unmistakably bridal in style. "Just picked up my bridesmaid dress. What do you think?" she texted. When Emily called to remind her that the bridesmaids were wearing sage green, Rachel feigned confusion. "Oh, was that finalized? I must have missed that email." "Well, I've already bought this one, and returns are such a hassle." It took 3 days of back and forth, with my mother eventually stepping in, before Rachel grudgingly agreed to get the correct dress. Emily was upset but tried not to show it. "It's fine," she insisted, though I could see the strain in her smile. As long as she has the right dress on the day, that's all that matters. The night before our wedding, we held the rehearsal dinner at my parents' house. Everything was going well. The food was delicious. The toasts were heartfelt, and even Rachel seemed to be on her best behavior. Until she wasn't. I found her alone on the back porch, nursing a glass of whiskey, staring out into the darkness of my parents' backyard. "Cold feet yet?" she asked as I sat down beside her. "Not even a little," I replied honestly. "I've never been more sure of anything." She took a long sip of her drink. "You know, you don't really know who you're marrying." I laughed it off. "I think after 4 years, I have a pretty good idea." Rachel turned to face me, her eyes glassy. People hide things, especially the perfect ones like Emily. There was something in her voice, bitterness, resentment. I couldn't quite place it. "You're my brother. I just don't want to see you get hurt." I attributed her cryptic warning to the whiskey and her own failed relationship history. "I appreciate the concern, but I'm good. We're good." She just shook her head. "We'll see." The morning of the wedding dawned clear and crisp, one of those perfect autumn days that photographers dream about. My groomsmen and I got ready at my parents' house, the atmosphere light with jokes and anticipation. My best friend Dan kept checking that I had the rings every 5 minutes, and my father straightened my tie with hands that trembled slightly more than usual. "Your mother and I are so proud of you," he said, his voice thick. "Emily is a wonderful woman." I felt a surge of emotion. This was really happening. I was marrying the love of my life, surrounded by everyone who mattered to us. Even Rachel seemed to have turned a corner, helping my mother with her corsage and smiling in the family photos we took in the garden. The ceremony was set for 4 p.m., timed so the reception would begin at sunset. The venue was everything Emily had envisioned. Strings of warm lights crisscrossed the barn's exposed beams. Wildflower arrangements adorned each row of chairs, and at the front, a simple arch woven with greenery and white roses awaited us. Standing at the altar, watching our guests settle into their seats, I felt a profound sense of rightness. Dan stood beside me, occasionally cracking jokes to keep my nerves at bay. The string quartet began playing, and one by one, the bridesmaids walked down the aisle, each one beaming. Then came Rachel, surprisingly composed in her sage green dress, though I noted she'd accessorized with more dramatic jewelry than the other bridesmaids. Then the music changed. The guests rose, and there was Emily, on her father's arm, radiating joy in her simple, elegant gown. My chest tightened with emotion as she walked toward me, her eyes never leaving mine. This was what mattered. This moment, this woman, our future together. The ceremony progressed smoothly. The officiant spoke about commitment and partnership. We had each written our own vows, and after I finished mine, hands slightly shaking as I promised to stand by Emily through whatever life brought our way, she began hers. "Alex," she started, her voice clear and steady. "From the moment we met." "Stop." The single word sliced through the air like a physical force. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined it. But then Rachel stood up from her place in the line of bridesmaids, her face flushed. "You can't marry her," she said, her voice unnaturally loud in the shocked silence. "She's been cheating on you. I have proof." Time seemed to suspend. I looked at Emily, whose expression had transformed from radiant joy to horrified disbelief. The guests began to murmur. Our officiant, clearly unprepared for this development, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Rachel," I managed to say, "this isn't the time or place for." But she was already pulling out her phone, walking toward me. "I didn't want to do this, but you deserve to know the truth before you make a mistake you can't undo." She thrust the phone at me, screen displaying what looked like Instagram DMs between Emily and someone named Mark. "She's been talking to her ex," Rachel announced to the entire assembly. "Planning meetings behind your back. There are photos too." Swipe left. My hands felt numb as I took the phone. Emily stepped toward me, her face pale. "Alex, I don't know what she's talking about. Let me see." Together, we looked at the messages. They were indeed from Emily's account to her ex-boyfriend, discussing meeting up for coffee. reminiscing about old times. But as I scrolled up, checking the dates, an icy clarity washed over me. These messages were from 5 years ago, before Emily and I had even met. "These are old," I said, looking up at Rachel. "These are from before Emily and I were even together." Rachel shook her head vigorously. "No, keep scrolling. There are recent ones too." But there weren't. Just old conversations that had no bearing on our relationship. The photos she'd mentioned were similarly innocuous: Emily and her ex at what was clearly a group dinner, tagged from years ago. Emily's hand trembled as she touched my arm. "Alex, I haven't spoken to Mark in years. You know that." I believed her immediately, but the damage was already done. The sacred atmosphere of our ceremony had been shattered. Guests were whispering, some looking embarrassed, others morbidly fascinated by the unfolding drama. Emily's parents had stood up, her father's face thunderous. "I think," our officiant said quietly, "we might need a moment. Perhaps everyone could step outside for a brief intermission." What followed was chaos dressed in wedding attire. Guests awkwardly filed out to the cocktail area, while our wedding party closed ranks around Emily and me. Rachel stood alone, her initial righteous certainty crumbling as she realized her evidence wasn't holding up. My parents approached, my father's expression stern in a way I rarely saw. "What were you thinking?" he demanded of Rachel. "I was trying to protect him," she insisted, tears now streaming down her face, smearing her carefully applied makeup. I was sure." Emily and I retreated to the small room where she had prepared earlier. Once alone, the full weight of what had just happened crashed over us. Emily sat heavily on a velvet settee, her wedding dress pooling around her. "I'm so sorry," I said, kneeling in front of her. "Rachel had no right to do that. None of it's true." "I know that," Emily said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "And you know that. But everyone out there." She gestured vaguely toward the door. "What must they be thinking? My parents, your family, our friends. They all just witnessed your sister accuse me of cheating at our wedding." The humiliation in her voice cut me deeply. This should have been our perfect day, and instead, it had been derailed by Rachel's unfounded accusations, by her need to be the center of attention, even if it meant destroying our ceremony. "We can still do this," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "We'll explain the misunderstanding and continue." Emily looked at me, eyes brimming with tears she was too proud to let fall. "It won't be the same. She's taken something from us, Alex. Something we can't get back." She was right. Even if we resumed the ceremony, the moment had been poisoned. Every guest would be watching for signs of trouble, analyzing our every reaction through the lens of Rachel's accusations. Our vows would be spoken under the shadow of her lies. We decided to postpone the ceremony. My father made the announcement while Emily and I remained hidden away, avoiding the pitying looks and awkward questions. Our wedding planner, earning every penny of her fee that day, efficiently informed vendors of the change of plans. The cocktail hour would proceed, followed by dinner and dancing, just without the actual wedding part. Later that evening, after changing out of her wedding dress into the outfit she'd planned for our departure, Emily squeezed my hand. "I'm going home with my parents tonight. I think we both need some space to process this." It wasn't a breakup, but it was the first night we'd spent apart in over 2 years, and it was supposed to be our wedding night. I found Rachel sitting alone at the edge of the property, mascara streaked down her face, looking nothing like the confident woman who had stood up to derail my wedding hours earlier. "Why?" I asked simply, sitting beside her on the stone wall. "I thought I was helping you," she whispered. "I really believed she was hiding something from you." "Based on what, Rachel?" 5-year-old Instagram messages. She wiped at her face, smearing her makeup further. "Mark messaged me last week. Said I should warn you about Emily. That she wasn't who you thought she was. And you believed him? Some guy you've never met? Over the woman I've built a life with for 4 years." Rachel looked down at her hands. "He seems so sincere, and I've always worried. She's so perfect, Alex. No one's really that perfect. That's when it hit me. The core of Rachel's actions wasn't protection. It was jealousy. Not romantic jealousy, but something deeper and more insidious. She couldn't stand that I had found happiness while she remained alone. That Emily had integrated so seamlessly into our family, while Rachel increasingly felt like an outsider. You know what the worst part is? I said quietly. It's not that you believed lies about Emily. It's that you chose to ambush us at the altar instead of coming to me privately. You wanted an audience. You wanted drama. No, she began, then stopped, unable to deny the truth of my words. I've always defended you, I continued. Always made excuses for your behavior. But this? I don't know how to forgive this. She broke down then, sobbing openly. I'm so alone, Alex. Everyone has someone but me. Mom and Dad have each other. You have Emily. I have no one. And watching you get this perfect life with this perfect woman, I just snapped. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to fall back into our familiar dynamic where I smoothed things over and protected her from the consequences of her actions. But I couldn't. Not this time. Being lonely doesn't give you the right to try to destroy other people's happiness, I said, standing up. I hope you get help, Rachel. But I can't be the one to give it to you anymore. I walked away, leaving her crying in the gathering darkness. The days that followed were a blur of damage control. Emails to guests explaining the misunderstanding, returning gifts, canceling our honeymoon. Emily and I spent long hours talking through what had happened and what it meant for us. The initial shock and humiliation gradually gave way to resolve. I'm not letting your sister take this from us, Emily said firmly about a week after the non-wedding. I still want to marry you, Alex. I just don't want another big ceremony. We eloped a month later. Just the two of us, a justice of the peace, and two strangers as witnesses on a clifftop overlooking the ocean. No family, no friends, no spectacle. Just our vows and our commitment to each other. In some ways, it was more meaningful than the elaborate event we'd originally planned. As for Rachel, I haven't spoken to her since that night. My parents tell me she started therapy, which is a step in the right direction. Maybe someday we'll rebuild some version of a relationship. But for now, the distance feels necessary and right. People sometimes ask about our wedding, and I've learned to give the abbreviated version. We ended up eloping. Big weddings aren't really our style. It's easier than explaining that my sister tried to destroy the happiest day of my life out of her own unresolved pain and jealousy. I got the woman I love, but my sister gave me a wedding day I'll never forget, for all the wrong reasons. In the end, though, it's not the ceremony that matters. It's the life you build afterward. And despite Rachel's best efforts, Emily and I are building ours stronger than ever.